on, Bears fans? Another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the Designer, Jason McKie in the building. Listen, we've been talking about Myles Garrett a little bit this week. We talked about it on Monday with Shay Norling. Tuesday, we kind of broke down how the Bears might have to get something done with Courtney Cronin. I want to have this conversation with J Mack because if you're going to go big, right, swing for the fences. If you have this mindset of we could bring in Myles Garrett, do you need to make some other calls that maybe still great players, but maybe it works better financially for you? We'll talk about all that and more on today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. J Mack, big day for you, my guy. How you feeling, man?
You're feeling good, man. It's a big day, another big day in high school football. It's the second national signing day, so a lot of, high school seniors will be getting their opportunity and signing their letters of intent to play with their respective colleges. So it's just a testament of all the hard work that they've put in and actually realizing, the first step of achieving their dream of being a student athlete will be realized today. So, we got some things going on at the school. My son will be signing today with the University of Dayton. So definitely a proud McKie household to be a part of that and just to see him continue his journey. And all the guys, all my student athletes, got a couple more kids signing as well. So, I'm proud of these kids, and I just want to congratulate everybody, all the kids, especially in the Chicagoland area, getting this opportunity because, hey, not every kid's going to have that opportunity beyond high school to go off and play college football. So congrats to everybody. Congrats to all the great programs and coaches and families throughout the Chicagoland area.
What do you think is going to be like getting to finally take the Coach McKie hat off with your son and actually being the dad in the stand sitting there watching him go out there and play at Dayton?
It'd be cool, man. It's tough because, being a high school coach, you're watching the games on Friday, but you're coaching. You know what I mean? So the funny thing is his last game, last game of this year, senior year, I didn't even realize it was his last game because you're in coach mode, you're game planning, you're going throughout the weekly preparation. And you realize it's the senior's last game, but at the same time, you're like, well, damn, it's my son's last game too, as a high school football player, so it's been awesome, man. We have a lot of great seniors. It's been a great, great opportunity to be able to coach your son in high school. So it's good, man. I'm excited for him. I'm excited, where he's going. I think he's going to a great program with a lot of great coaches. Obviously a great school, great academics, great infrastructure set up for success. And I think, he'll do well there. So definitely excited. I'm going to have all my Dayton stuff on out there, Pat. I'm going to drag you with me, man. We have to go out there and catch some games, man.
Listen, I'm down the road to a Dayton game. I ain't going to lie to you. What's their big rival? What's Dayton's big rival? Is that
I don't know. Honestly, I think they play in the Pioneer League. So they play Valparaiso, they play Butler. They'll play Eastern Illinois this year. So it's football,
maybe we get a little Dayton EIU. We get Yurko to come down with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we can do it.
I see Sean Payton at the game. See, there's some great people coming out of EIU.
Bring the good kid with us, Yerk.
Hey, that'll be a fun trip. I ain't gonna lie to you. We won't be able to record most of it. Let's talk a little bit. Let's
intoxicated.
Let's talk a little bit of Bears football here, J Mack, because like I said, the conversation around Myles Garrett has been heavy. He requested a trade on Monday. I mean, everybody lost their mind. Every single team's content creators had should my team trade for Myles Garrett? When realistically, I'm not gonna lie, as the days have gone by, it feels more like hey, I got these void years coming up. Y'all not finna pay me on these void years. I need guaranteed money again. I don't foresee them getting rid of a generational talent like Myles Garrett in Cleveland. I think they end up getting a deal done. But the question I want to ask you is, if you're willing to pick up the phone, if you're Ryan Poles and you're willing to pick up the phone and say, hey, what's it going to cost you to get Myles Garrett? They tell you their price and you mull it over because of the kind of player that Myles Garrett is.
Facts.
Would you be intrigued to go out there and possibly try and reach out? If you'll pay that price and say, Max Crosby probably not happy in his situation in Oakland, they rebuilding again. Trey Hendrickson been asking out for X amount of years. They may cost me a little bit less money in that situation.
Yeah. I think you got to look at all options, right? And we've seen the Bears, we've seen the McCaskies open up that checkbook. They got the coach that you want. They spent for him. You know what I mean? We talked about this over and over again, Pat. You get what you pay for. And we look at Myles Garrett in terms of, I just look at the production he's had, right? And I was doing some research before the show. 8 years, right? 8-year career. He's got 102.5 sacks. Yes, that half sack matters, okay? Everybody thinks that half sack don't matter. I done seen fist fights with Alex Brown and Adewale Agunle arguing over who got that half a sack. So that half a sacks matters. So he's got 102.5, Pat, in 8 years, right? So looking at the Bears, okay? So I took the Bears defensive ends and I took their career stats, their career sacks, and I added them up, right? So I took Jacob Martin, 8-year career, DeMarcus Walker, 8-year career, Darrell Taylor, 4-year career. We know Austin Booker was a rookie last year. Daniel Hardy was a rookie last year. Montez Sweat, I threw Montez Sweat in there because he's the key, right? He's the big dog on that defensive line. 7-year career. So those sack totals, when you add all those guys up collectively, 120.5 sacks collectively. That's total. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 guys. You got Myles with 102.5. So I think when you look at, Pat, just the production, right, of Myles Garrett, and when you break that down, 8 years, that averages to it was 12.8 sacks. So let's round it up. Let's say 13. That's 13 sacks a year. He had 14 last year. Last year, the Bears, right, total, collectively, that's all position, not just the defensive line. We had 40 total sacks, which put us 16th in the NFL. So I think when you look at the productivity, right, of Myles Garrett compared to what you have, but then what's out there, you mentioned Max Crosby, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson. You got to see what that dollar sign looks like, because when you bring in a guy like Myles Garrett, we throw out that word generational talent all the time, but this dude is truly a generational talent. He can transcend any defense. He can fit in any scheme because of his pass rush ability and his productivity. So I think you've got the money, right? You've already shown that you all of a sudden, right? Finally, you're not afraid to spend some money. You did it with a coach. You're bringing in a great coaching staff. But I think that's, what is the price tag? And then what does Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen, what do they covet the most in this defense, right? We talk about rush and coverage, right? That pass rush is going to help the coverage that the secondary is playing in, right? They work together in tandem. And we saw the Bears defense sort of, trend downward last year because we weren't getting pressure on that quarterback, right? And you look at Montez Sweat, 5.5 sacks last year. He was your main guy. The second guy on this defense, DeMarcus Walker, 3.5 sacks, Pat. That ain't going to get it done. That ain't going to get it done. So I think it's something that is very intriguing. I think that, I would be surprised if Ryan Poles didn't explore or didn't make a call out to the Cleveland Browns to see what that number could be. And then I think you have to put that number up with the productivity and put that on, compare that to the guys that you mentioned, like a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson or anybody else out there, because, I think you got to explore all options, and that checkbook has to stay open if you're serious about winning.
The one fear that I think a lot of Bears fans have right now is the money that you would have to attribute to Montez Sweat. While you do have the money, to Myles Garrett, not Montez Sweat. While you do have the money, it probably is, right? You're probably making him the highest paid defensive end in football right now, which is probably around 35 million, $36 million a year. That's a good chunk of change going to one player on your team. Now, granted, that one player is Myles Garrett. I wonder if the Bears would look at that and say, listen, we got the book open and we were willing to pull the trigger on this, but the Browns maybe aren't willing to go after it. Because I think that's, if a team trades Myles Garrett, or if he does want out, he's worth the draft capital. He's worth the money to me. The biggest question on all of this for me is, are the Browns realistically going to let him out of his let him get away, let him be traded away, let him out of his deal, any of that? Because if they are, they're not smart. Now, we've seen that the Browns are not a very bright organization, but I can't beat my chest over what we've done over the past few years, but we're changing that here. But listen, 16, 16, 14, 14, those are the sack numbers the last 4 years. Myles Garrett is not just a great pass rusher. He's one of the greatest pass rushers that we have seen in NFL history. To me, you pay whatever price it costs to get a guy like that in the building, because you're not going to be able to come up on a guy like that every single day. And for the people, I said this yesterday, J Mack, I don't know if you remember this or if this was, on TV when you were growing up, but conjunction junction. This is not a or season. This is a and season. Last year should have been an and season.
Yes.
I can have Myles Garrett and I can address this offensive line. Yes, you may end up trading that 10th overall pick. You may end up having to trade a first-round pick next season. I do think right back to that Mack deal, I think you're probably very similar to what you saw with Khalil Mack if you were to trade those picks away. But the conversation on Myles Garrett to me is not, is he worth it? It's, are you willing to pay it? And if I'm the Bears, knowing that I can do that and fix the offensive line, and I've already got Jalen Johnson. I've already got DJ Moore. I've already got Rome Odunze. I've already got Tyrese Stevenson. I've got these pieces. You're going to have to let some people go. I'm sorry. I know these are your fan favorites. Yeah, but you're going to have to let some of these guys go. Like, that's a different level of player. I'd be willing to pay the price. I would think if you opened up the checkbook this much to this point, the Bears would be willing to pay that price.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that when you look at and seeing firsthand like this defense this year, right, and the quarterbacks that had success against this defense, how much time they had to throw, right? And a lot of times we're sitting there like, where's Montez Sweat? Where's DeMarcus Walker? Where is anybody? Is anybody going to even have a fingerprint on that quarterback's jersey at times? You know what I'm saying? So when you bring a guy in, if it makes sense, the Bears are willing to pay the money, you know what you're getting. You're going to at least get 13 sacks. I mean, that's instantly improvement on the defense. You know what I'm saying? That transcends a defense right now. As soon as you sign him, our defense got better. Our defense would probably rank, you know, at the top of the NFC North if you bring in a guy like Myles Garrett. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a matter of, you know, there's a lot of things you got to weigh. Like you mentioned, those other free agents that's out there. You mentioned you got the draft coming up with a lot of guys I know we'll get into here in a minute. They got some upside. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about, okay, if the Bears go down this scenario, okay, we're not going to pay that much for Myles Garrett. We're going to look at Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson, or no, we're not going to bring any one of them guys. We're going to go to the draft. And you look at the draft and look at the top edge rushers in the draft right now. And I just took 3 of them. Obviously, Abdul Carter from Penn State. You got 1. James Pierce from the University of Tennessee. And then you got Mike Green from Marshall, right? Here's the thing. All of those guys, you know, good productivity in college, tremendous upside. But at the end of the day, right, the draft is a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. It's an unknown. Regardless of where you pick guys, it's a crapshoot. We don't know. We have all these projections. You get all these measurables and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, you do not know how their game is going to translate on the NFL level. Nothing's ever a known with the draft. I don't care if you're the first pick, second, whatever. Nothing's ever a known. But the one thing that's a known is, you know, Myles Garrett, based upon his career, is going to get to that quarterback. You know what I'm saying? You know, Max Crosby's going to get to that quarterback. You know, Trey Hendrickson's going to get to that quarterback on the NFL level. Like, there's no question of whether or not Myles Garrett's game is going to translate from Cleveland to Chicago. It's going to translate. He's shown it year after year. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if Abdul Carter's game is going to translate from the playing in the Big Ten at Penn State to coming here at Soldier Field. I don't know if James Pierce's game is going to translate going from Tennessee coming here to the Chicago Bears, or being able to, you know, Can Abdul Carter, can Mike Green beat NFL tackles consistently, you know, top level NFL tackles? I don't know that. It's a crapshoot. They have the potential. They've got the measurables. They got the athleticism. That's why they're, you know, some of the top guys in the draft, but you just don't know. You know what I mean? And if you're willing to take that chance, you know, they just signed a new D-line coach. It's his job to develop these guys and make sure that they reach their potential. But in terms of Myles Garrett, it's a known. You know what you're going to get. But guess what? When you know what you're going to get and it's productive and it's consistent, it's going to cost you. And that's where the Bears, I mean, that's the evaluation that they're going to have.
Yeah, no, for sure. The one thing that I do wonder is, right, because I think you're also in a situation where none of these are terrible options. If you do go the Max Crosby route, you're probably sending a very similar package, but maybe you're paying a little bit less money for Max Crosby than you would have to pay for Myles Garrett. You might even be sending more realistically, because Max Crosby 2 years younger. But you know you're getting an elite pass rusher. You're getting your number 1 pass rusher on that team. When you look at Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson has been, 14 and a half sacks last season. Like, he's been, or 17. I'm sorry, I shorted him. I apologize, J Mack. 17 and a half sacks last season. And he's had back-to-back seasons of 17 and a half sacks.
That's almost half what the Bears. Him by himself almost had half of what the Bears had total as a team last year.
There are the names out there, and Trey Hendrickson, I think, is a little less, right? But I think the point that I'm trying to make here is, if you're willing to go Garrett, I would look around if Garrett's not available. Right? Because that is my question. I think the Browns are going to look at it and be like, we're not trading him, bro. Like, we'll just figure the contract out, pay him whatever the heck he wants. We'll figure it out. He's Myles Garrett. We're not letting him leave. To me, if that is the case, I start to look around. I'm looking at a Max Crosby to say, all right, what's it going to cost to get you? Because now I got the mindset of, I'm ready to trade to bring in a proven player here. Or I'm looking at a Trey Hendrickson and saying, it's going to cost a little bit less, but we know the production that we're going to be able to get out of them. We're willing to sign you to this deal. And I think the part that scares a lot of Bears fans with this is you're investing so much at that position on one guy. But if I go and look around teams around the league, J Mack, and I look at where they're spending the most money, the teams that are usually in the Super Bowl, it's usually in those trenches and the quarterback position. Usually you see high-paid left tackles, high-paid centers, high-paid nose tackles, high-paid defensive ends. You usually see that on a defensive line. I am fine if we get into the 2025 season and the Chicago Bears come into the season paying almost $80 million in people on the trenches side of the ball versus everybody on the outside who, you need the talent, but why the heck can San Francisco swap in 4 different quarterbacks and they all have some semblance of success? Why can Kansas City continue to flip the script and make it back to Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes when now you don't have the same level of receivers? We got Chris Jones on the other side, though, and he's killing people every single game.
How much did they pay him? How much did they pay Chris Jones? You see what I mean? You get, hey, sacks cost money, right? Production costs money, okay? Yeah. On the opposite side, right? Let's go to the offensive line. Protecting your quarterback costs money. It costs money. You can try to do it the cheap way. You can try to do it the patchwork way that we've done, that we've tried to, establish. You're doing it the patchwork way and trying to get around, paying guys or paying the wrong guy, should I say. And what happens? Your quarterback's getting hit upside his head. Well, how many sacks? 68? Was it 68?
68 sacks.
68 sacks, right?
Yeah.
You pay the guy that didn't even play. You pay the guard that didn't even play. You pay the guard that's not even here. You know what I mean? Like, you got to build it up the right way, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. You're going to have to pay for sacks. They cost money. And to protect your quarterback, it's going to cost you money. You get what you pay for. Just like you brought in a coach, you paid for a first-time head coach because you believe in him. Well, hey, guess what? It's going to cost you whether or not you get Myles Garrett, you go get Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson. It's going to cost you something. And I think when you look at all those guys, and like you said, Pat, Cleveland would be crazy to let Myles Garrett walk away. And I agree with you 100%. But even if, the Bears still got to do their due diligence and still evaluate all 3 of those guys and what the price tag would be, for the unknown, just in case all of a sudden Myles Garrett's off the board. Okay. How do we feel Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson compared to the guys that's in the draft that may be available when we pick at number 10? You know what I mean? Like, you've got to do all those, and I'm sure they're doing it. This is what they do all day. The scouting department, Ryan Poles, he creates all these different scenarios and equations on, if we go here, if they take this guy here, what if, this guy falls at 10? They have all kinds of different scenarios in terms of working this draft board and how it may fall, how it may play out and who may land to the Bears at number 10, or if they want to jump up and grab somebody, whether that be an offensive lineman as well. They're going through all these scenarios. But the one thing that we know that has to be improved is getting better on the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, 100%. And to me, right, like, it's just that mindset of you're willing to spend for the best of the best. Maybe you can't get them. That doesn't mean you should be unwilling to spend that on the flip side of this. It shouldn't be, we were willing to do this for Myles Garrett, but we're not willing to do it for Max Crosby. We're not. The price is different. It's going to be different. They're different levels of pass rusher. But and I'll say this, J Mack, like you brought up the draft, and I think that's a good place to look as well. Because if you're in that mindset, and maybe it's the money that's the issue with some of these guys, right? Maybe it's the, we want a guy like that, but we want the longevity. We want we want to have that rookie contract, and we still need a elite pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat in that situation. who's to say you don't try and trade up for Abdul Carter, who seems to be the next version of one of these guys? Again, like you said, you don't know in the draft, but to me, he feels like one of those dudes that you'd look back on 10 years from now and go, yeah, we kind of knew. You never know, but we kind of knew. Like he seems like that elite level of a pass rusher. Yeah. If I'm looking at the draft and I'm at 10 and I'm not convinced, one, I'm getting Will Campbell, or two, that Kelvin Banks is a tackle, I'm looking around and going, well, we were going to trade some draft capital to go get Max Crosby, or I'm sorry, to go get Myles Garrett, and we were going to have to pay him $35 million a year. What if we trade up and go get Abdul Carter, trade some draft capital, probably less draft capital?
Yeah.
And we got to pay him $35 million for the next 4 years, broken up into 4 years. If you're willing to spend on the big name here, I look at the draft in a very similar way. If you feel that Abdul Carter turns into Myles Garrett, I'm eyeballing that. I'm taking a look at that because you still got second round picks. You still got third round picks. There's still opportunities for you to go out and draft young pieces. And there's still pieces in free agency that you can sign to this team. It's and not or. That has to be the theme of this offseason.
But I think another thing we got to look at too, right? New defensive coordinator and Dennis Allen, who's had success coaching defenses, throughout his time in the NFL. It's also going to be, what he sees in terms of what his defense looks like, right? And I say that to say this: what type of DN does he covet in his defensive scheme? Schematically, height and weight, all those variables. Like, what type of guy is he looking for that as a fit in his defense, right? So let's say Abdul Carter, they love him, but he's not really a fit in Dennis Allen's defensive scheme, right? Because he looks at him, a guy who's coached defense for a long time, a guy who's evaluated a lot of players, and he's all of a sudden says, hey, you know what? I think Mike Green from Marshall is a better fit in our defense. And I think despite where they're at now, I think Mike Green's going to have the more upside than an Abdul Carter. You know what I'm saying? So there's all kinds of scenarios that's going to be played out, in the war room, throughout the upcoming months and after the combine, and see how these guys test, see how they move with the interviews and stuff like that. And I think Dennis Allen's going to be a huge part of that because he's got to find the right fit schematically, right? I know he knows Myles Garrett, and I know he knows Max Crosby and all those guys, Trey Hendrickson, but but schematically, he's going to want to try to find the right fit for his defense, right? And, whether if he feels like he has a guy on the roster now, and Austin Booker and Daniel Hardy, guys who have only been here for a year, but if he feels like, hey, these guys got a lot of upside and potential, we can help develop these guys. I'm bringing in a new D-line coach that can unlock that potential. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of different things that's going to contribute to these evaluations of these guys that we're talking about. But, all those guys, like the free agents we're talking about, Garrett and Hendrickson and Crosby, all those guys are great players. But it's also going to be, what type of player that Dennis Allen may covet to fit in his defense schematically.
See, and this is why I love having you on the show, right? Because you're not only a former player, you've been a part of the game, you're also a coach now. I would say to you, as the person who's the fan, as the analyst looking in, if I can give you the best talent available, you got to figure out how to make that work for your system. Figure out how to make that work for your scheme. I think that's something that Dennis Allen has done a great job with. I think like if you look at like some of the other guys in this draft, maybe they do fit better. Maybe they do fit what Dennis Allen does well, and you can get a lot out of them. Are they the most talented guy at that spot? I think is often a question in the first round, going talent over need, because to me, Abdul Carter seems like the clear-cut, most talented edge rusher in this draft. Doesn't mean he's going to fit every scheme, but if I'm Dennis Allen, right, I gotta in my mind go, all right, but how can I make him? How can I adjust my scheme so that he fits it? Because he's going to be the face of this defense for hopefully the next 10 years if we can make this all work.
Yeah, and I think it also goes to, so, every NFL team, right, position-wise, they have the traits that they like at that position, or every coordinator has traits in which they like at that position, right? And we heard that from last year, with Coach Eberflus, they coveted guys on defense that had no Diddy, length, size, you know what I'm saying? No Diddy. Come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, but they all had those traits, like length, size, and speed. They wanted like guys that were long, they were athletic, you know what I'm saying? They could run. But what type of traits does Dennis Allen covet from his defensive end position? You know what I mean? Yeah. So he's going to have to also, how do those guys fit in that equation of guys in terms of their traits, their playing style? How does that fit in their defense? Because Dennis Allen, he already knows what type of player he wants and what type of player he's had success with within his defenses based upon their traits and their play style, right? So when you look at Abdul Carter, and this is from Pro Football Focus, they give everybody strengths and their weaknesses, right? And, I'll start with the strengths. Obviously, he's a rare athlete. Explosiveness, they talk about. He has natural bend, which is huge for a defensive end because you got to have that elite bend to be able to dip under those tackles, right? Them tackles, some of these guys can't bend, they can't get low, but when you're a defensive end, you have that natural bend and you can really get off the ball and bend and dip under those offensive tackles. That's a rare trait. That's an elite quality, and they say that Abdul Carter has that, right? But here's one thing I look at, and I think it's his weaknesses. I look at it like this, right? It's something that can be coached, but I look at it right now. So they say he has a small false step in terms of his first step in getting off the ball, which means he takes a step backwards or he takes a replacement step before exploding off the line of scrimmage. You know what I'm saying? So that can make you a half a second late when getting off the ball. And they also said he needs to get more precise with his hands, right? So that means he doesn't get more precise in terms of where he's placing his hands on that tackle, right? More often than likely, you want your hands inside on the chest of that tackle, especially when you're coming off the ball and using speed to power, which is the same thing as a bull rush. You want to be able to punch that that offensive tackle in the chest, right? So using your hands is a big thing, but that's something that can be coached. That's something that can be developed, right? You have a coach that can eliminate that false step as well. You know what I'm saying? So those are things when I talk about, you bring in a guy, yes, he's going to be a top 10 pick, but all these guys are going to have things they need to work on at the NFL level that can get him in trouble, because that false step, that can get him in trouble. That's going to make him late. You know what I'm saying? And if you're late off the ball with these quarterbacks in the NFL, that ball's gone and you ain't going to get there because that tackle is going to lock you up.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's the traits that he has, I love. And that's what really makes him stand out to me. You know what I mean? Like I really feel that he has everything that you could coach, that a coach doesn't need to work with, but can adjust to. And then what can you add to his game, right? Comes in with that great base value, all those things you listed there, right? The strengths and weaknesses. We can work on the weaknesses. Here's the strengths though. And I love, right, like Coach Belichick always talked about, I think it was you said this, right? Talking about one of the scouts of the guys that one of your guys that had over there, right? Where he talked about we go at guys with what they do well, then we work on the rest.
Yeah, he
like
said,
that mindset, I think, is something that the Bears need. Go ahead.
No, my fault, Pat. He said, just to your point, exactly what you're saying. Like, as draft analysts, right, and all these scouts and these different, these organizations, right, they'll look at guys and say they can't do this. We're going to hear a lot of that throughout this combine process, throughout the draft process. Well, he can't do this. He can't do that. He can't do this. Well, what can he do based upon the system that we're running? What can he do based upon the offense that we're implementing? What can he do based upon the techniques that we want our D-line to play with? And I think those are things that you have to look at when evaluating all these guys. Well, if he's not a guy or we're not a defense that, we require our defensive end to two gap, then we don't care, because we don't need Abdul Carter to two gap the entire time. We want him to get upfield. Yeah. We want him to get upfield. We want him to be a disruptor, get upfield. We want him to play the run on the way to rushing the quarterback. Like, those are things that, right now, I think that we don't know what the Bears covet because it's so new with a new defensive coordinator. We don't know what Dennis Allen covets in terms of the defensive line. Does he want bigger guys that's going to two gap guys, or does he want guys that's just going to get upfield and get off the ball?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say that scares me is when you focus so much on what you want, sometimes you miss what is great. And you have to have your wants as a team, as a coach, all that. But I think back, and this one always sticks with me, and it's one of your teammates, dog. But the draft, we took Rex, and no disrespect to Rex, love Rex. We traded out of a pick though that Troy Polamalu went after Rex. Troy Polamalu in this defense is terrifying, right? Yeah. Like, and again, it was what we were coveting right then. We were covered in the quarterback. We had to get it right. First off, and absolutely no disrespect to Rex. I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, something like that. I was having a conversation about Rex Grossman. Somebody was like, I just don't get, like, why did we draft Rex? And I was like, oh, you don't remember Rex at Florida. And we went through the Florida tape. I forgot how much he was balling as a freshman.
Yeah, he
I
was a
forgot
dog.
about how much he was balling as a freshman because remember he came in his freshman year. So I knew why we took Rex. But you look at that and it was like, this is what we need. This is, and you missed out on a Troy Polamalu. You missed out on I want to say Terrell Suggs, I think, was there as well. I may be wrong on that one, but like looking for your need sometimes, I think you miss out on great talent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I don't want the Bears to do because our need is offensive line. 100%. And I know that's going to be all the comments in here. You can't go after these pieces. You can't trade up if you're not addressing the offensive line. How are you not addressing the offensive line? If we talking talent, I'd trade up for Will Campbell too. Like it's not just Abdul Carter, but when I'm looking at talent on a scale, Abdul Carter looks like he's going to be one of those Micah Parsons type dudes that we're asking the Bears to go get possibly via trade because Micah Parsons might not be happy in Dallas. Yeah. He looks like one of those Myles Garrett type dudes. Oh no, that's high praise. But like who we're asking the Bears, hey, Montez needs help. You need to get one of these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's, I mean, obviously, I think the heavy focus will be in the trenches on either side of the ball. So 100%. if you were to get Will, if you were to get Banks, if you were to get Abdul in the first round with that first pick, I'd be excited because now we're addressing either side of the trenches that's been a glaring weakness, especially last year or the past few years. Like that's a need, and you still have draft capital. And I know some people want us to take Ashton Genty, and I like Ashton Genty. I like him, but man, the running back class is so deep. There's so many good running backs in this draft. I mean, it's so many good running backs in this draft.
You know what I mean? Scatterboo.
Yeah, give me. I mean, there's so many guys. There's so Amarian Hampton from North Carolina is a good back. Like there's a lot of.
I really want to see what Ben Johnson thinks of Ian Wheeler. Me and you sat here and watched Ian Wheeler last year. Somebody who's already on your team, who's on a low money deal. We sat there and watched Ian Wheeler last year, and we were like, "Hey, this kid moving. He might be the best one out here."
Yeah, he's gonna have to. I mean, the sad thing is like now you've got to see how he's gonna come back from injury. Now he's got to get in the good graces of. New running back coach in Eric Bieniemy and a new offensive coordinator, and how does he fit in their scheme? Right now, even schematically, like with it's hard to see, when you're trying to see how these players fit in a system, right? And I wanted to go back and look at Detroit's offense and study that to see, what type of players they may covet, what type of run game scheme they really focus on. But when Ben Johnson came out and said, we're not running that offense, we're going to strip it down to the studs, like that just negates what you try to do in terms of studying the offense because it's not going to look like that. At least that's what he said, unless he's throwing out a smoke screen. So I think, with a lot of these guys, even with these offensive linemen, like what type of run game are we going to focus on, or what type of running team are we going to be? Are we going to be a zone team? Or are we going to be a gap scheme? And I think that really determines what type of offensive lineman you may try to bring in or even draft. If we've got a guy who Kelvin Banks, and I haven't looked at his tape, but is he a guy that can run? Well, then you're going to want more of an outside zone scheme because you're trying to get on the edges of the defense. And if you want a guy that really can come off the ball and really displace defensive linemen, right? We may be a true gap scheme team. Well, then Will Campbell may be the guy for you. So a lot of that's going to play a factor in who they bring in on either side of the ball, offense or defensive line, it depending on what this system is going to look like and what they're going to require these players to do within that system is going to determine who they take, who they may trade up and get, and if there's a guy that they like, and we know Ryan Poles is not afraid to do it, and the Bears ain't afraid to do it, they're going to package picks and go get their guy. And I like that because you're doing it with conviction. You're saying, we move up and get whoever. This guy is the guy we wanted. This guy is the guy we feel that can help, in the first round. You hope he can come in and help right away and can help transcend our offense or our defense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the one thing that I do love that the Bears are doing is you can go big here. Maybe you just go development. And it seems like they're putting together a coaching staff that is all about development. I would like to see them go big, get the big name piece, right? Like you're spending all this money, spend some money. I know it feels like we're light years away from being good, but this is actually an off season where if you spend money, if you spend capital, you can get pieces that make this look very different very quickly. You can get a Trey Smith. You can get a Drew Dahlman, or even draft a Jake Majors in the second round. You can get Will Campbell if you move up possibly, because I don't think he'll be there for you at 10. You can get Abdul. Like there's so many options for the Bears to actually fix the trenches. And oh, by the way, I also have DJ Moore. I've got Rome. I've got what does DeAndre Swift look like with an offensive line? I'm not high on him, but maybe he looks better with an offensive line. I on the other side, I got DBs out the wazoo. We saw what Tremaine Edmonds looked like. Everybody's all down on Tremaine Edmonds now, and I get it. He hasn't lived up to the contract. But we saw what he looked like when you were able to get pressure last season at the end, or 2 seasons ago at the end of the year when you traded for Montez Sweat and he gets all those sacks. All of a sudden, Tremaine Edmonds looks like the linebacker we dreamed of having here. So, like, I wonder how much they're willing to go all in on this offensive line this offseason. And if you are willing to go all in, I think you've got the coaches that can get the most out of them. If you want to go with 100%. Just run a regular draft, I think you got the coaches here, J Mack, that can get the most out of them. If you want to draft somebody at 10, if you want to draft somebody in the second round, 2 guys in the second round, you built a coaching staff to me. And they added D-line coach Jeremy Garrett the other day. Everywhere he's gone, the sack numbers have increased, the pressures have increased, the quarterback hits have increased. He worked with Myles Garrett from year 1 to year 2. Now, a lot of this might have just been Myles Garrett, but Myles Garrett went from a 7-sack guy to a 16-sack guy, and his quarterback hits went through the roof. His tackles for loss went through the roof. So I think that you've built a staff that can take the big name dudes and go out there and dominate, but also can develop a lot of the guys that maybe aren't the biggest name guys into some of those guys that become household names.
You built a staff, right, of a lot of these guys are former players that had success, right, that have turned into coaches and had success as coaches, but also have learned from a lot of great coaches. And I'll start with Eric Bieniemy. You bring him in as the running back coach. Eric Bieniemy's been an offensive coordinator. He's had the opportunity to learn under one of the best coaches of all time in Andy Reid, and he's seen what success looks like, and he's learned from one of the guys in terms of Andy Reid, who's one of the best at adaptability, right, creating offenses and creating plays that fit the skill set of your players. We heard Ben Johnson say that at his press conference. This offense will not look like Detroit because we have different players. So I'm going to be adaptable to my players' strengths and their skill sets, which is awesome, right? You look at Antoine Randall, a guy that's played receiver in this league, a guy that's hard-nosed, no-nonsense, and developed players. He developed Jameson Williams, who was a knucklehead when he first came in the league, right? And you see him do knucklehead things, and who's the first person to get him on the sideline right then and there. We're not going to address it when we get back in the facility on Monday. We're going to address this right now. Cut the BS. You know what I'm saying? And those are the type of guys, the culture builders, the dogs that you need in that locker room, like leading a team, coaching, developing guys. You look at Al Harris, a guy who my rookie year in Philly, a guy who I played with, a guy who I looked up to, a guy who's a dog on the football field. He's going to be a dog as a head coach. He's a culture builder. He's a no-nonsense guy, the same way he was as a player. He was a hard-working guy. And you don't think he's going to have that secondary playing fast and physical. We think Jalen Johnson's good right now, but I tell you this, Al Harris will enhance that play even more. Al Harris is going to enhance the play over Kyler Gordon. Jaquan Brister's going to want to play for a guy like Al Harris. You think Tyreek Stevens is doing all that BS that he's done all year, getting them stupid penalties? That ain't going to happen on Al Harris's watch, I guarantee you. And he's going to make Tyreek a better player. One, because Al has been there and he's been successful doing it, but Al's not going to put up with the bull crap. I'm telling you, man. And that's when you have guys like that in a locker room, right? And when you have guys that can establish a culture on a daily basis, set the foundation, set the expectations, right? And you have our players last year calling for that. That's what they wanted. Players want to be coached, believe it or not. Players want to be coached and they want to be held accountable. And we have a coaching staff that can set the table in terms of the standard and the culture on a daily basis. But then you have the players, right, setting the table and establishing the culture and standard and upholding it on a daily basis. That's the ingredients for a great team. And until you have those things where it starts at the top, but then it's managed by the players have to enforce it. If you don't have that in the equation, you ain't going to be a good team. But if you have that, you'll be a great team. And I think with the coaching staff that Ben Johnson has brought in and the coaching staff he's still establishing, you have that with this coaching staff.
Was Bieniemy around at all when you were drafted? Was he still around? Because I know his last year was in Philly. I don't know if he was like hanging around Andy at all as a coach at all.
No. So the crazy thing is, let's talk about that Eagles staff, right? Let's talk about that staff, my rookie year. So you talk about development, right? And this is, and I attest that the first coaching staff that I was around, me just learning the way they did things and me being around a lot of the pros in that locker room enabled me to have a 9-year NFL career as an undrafted free agent out of Temple University. Andy Reid's the head coach. Brad Childress was the offensive coordinator who was the head coach of the Vikings. You had David Culley, who was the head coach for the Houston Texans, was our wide receiver coach. You had Juan Castillo was the offensive line coach, been offensive line coach in this league for a long time. Sean McDermott was the defensive quality control coach, who's the head coach of the Buffalo Bills that almost went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then you had Ron Rivera was a linebacker coach. Leslie Frazier was a defensive backs coach. Man, I can go on and on. John Harbaugh was a special teams coach. Dave Tobe was the assistant special teams coach. Come on, man. And then you look at the guys that we had in that locker room, guys that set the table, that set the standard. You know, Al Harris was in the locker room. Bobby Taylor, Troy Vincent, who's the head of the NFLPA right now. You had Brian Dawkins, wasn't no foolishness. We better be out here practicing. He was going 100 miles an hour. You know what I'm saying? Like Deuce Staley was in our running back room, who's been a coach in this league. Hank Fraley, who's I think he's the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions right now, right? Did they bump him up?
I don't think they bumped. They made him not the OC
coordinator.
I think he became run game coordinator there.
Prime example,
because they just didn't want to lose him. Yeah, promotion to run game coordinator. Yep.
Hank Fraley was our starting center. You know what I mean? Like you had guys. I mean, it was unbelievable, man. Like it was unbelievable at, you know, the coaches that I got to see how they coached and learned from and understand what it took to be a pro. But then I had players, right, that really, you know, took that culture and took that standard and wore it like a badge of honor. So us as rookies, if we were BSing in practice, they were going to get on us. They were going to let us know. They weren't going to let us leave the facility without watching film. Deuce Staley used to have me and Brian Westbrook, who we were both rookies together in Philly. He used to have us stay in, like we would try, you know, we were young. We were trying to get up out of there. Man, we've been here since 7 o'clock. We out of here. No, we're watching film, young bucks. That's what he said. Young bucks, come on. We're going to watch film right now. And would actually quiz us on what we were seeing.
Yeah.
That aids in the development, right? We talk about just these coaches helping these players develop. It's also the players helping players develop, the veterans, right? The leaders of the team. You're more responsible, or you're more important in that development than the coaches. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going to be around the players more than the coaches.
Yeah, I truly wonder. Like you bring that up, the great staff that was there, and I think when I look at the staff here, I said this yesterday on the breeze. I don't have high expectations because I'm a jaded Bears fan like everybody else. So I'm hovering around like 7, 8, 9 wins, right? I'm like, yeah. It might be a fun season, more fun than 5.
I hope.
But I do understand. I have a hard time seeing this coaching staff fail for a very similar reason that the Andy Reid coaching staffs have always been very successful, for a very similar reason that I've compared it to a Mike Holmgren style coaching staff, where you've got a Reid, you've got a Gruden, you've got all these guys that, they're coaching positions, but also it's like, hey, draw that up. See if you want to use that play this Sunday. Oh, that worked. Oh, it's a touchdown. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there is a lot of that where I have a tough time seeing this coaching staff fail, but you brought up the players in the locker room. I know Jalen Johnson is a leader by action. He's always the last one on the practice field, always the last one on the practice field. I know that Cole Kmet tried to be that vocal leader last year, but just got tired at a certain point, I guess, because guys were like, I don't know what happened, right? You don't know the ins and outs of it, but do you have the leaders as far as players on this team to carry that message to the next level, where the young bucks are like, yo, I'm finna get out of here. And he's like, where you going? Right. And maybe it is Caleb this year with more power because he's not a rookie anymore and he feels like he can speak up and he's the quarterback of the team. And I mean, he's probably going to have a lot more power this season because they hired an entire coaching staff, it feels like, to make sure that he's right. But like, I just feel like your leaders this season have to be leaders no matter the situation. And when things got tough, you kind of started to see people kind of fall off from in that leadership council. outside of Mercedes Lewis, who you said to J Mack, how you gonna be a leader and you taking one day off a week?
I mean, and don't get me wrong, like I love Mercedes Lewis. Like it's not like, when I said that, I'm not going to discredit what he's done playing as long as he's played. That's amazing. Like, I'm still shocked by it. You know what I mean? And he is a leader, but at the same time, if I'm a young guy, right, and I look out there and I got a guy who's breaking down the huddle in street clothes, like, you're not out here though. You know what I'm saying? And and I see it's okay. But that's also, you got to put that on the coaching staff, right? Because if I got young players that aren't practicing, you know what I mean? They're not practicing. I got young guys taking vet days off. Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And I can only go back to the teams that I played on, but teams that I played on, if you weren't practicing, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. Even if I wasn't physically able to, I was embarrassed and I was mad because I was letting my team down. But if I wasn't practicing because, my wrist is sore, guess what? We had leaders that was going to look at me sideways, but why aren't you practicing? Why isn't he practicing? You know what I'm saying? And we could talk about, do we have the leaders in this locker room to lead? But it goes back to the coaches, right? You have to develop leaders. And the players are going to let go of they're going to let things slide in terms of what they see the coaches let slide. Yeah. Receiver goes out there and drops a pass. Coach doesn't get on him. The leaders ain't going to enforce it. The coach ain't enforcing it. He hasn't set the standard. He hasn't set the expectation. And it seems to me, and I'm not in that locker room, but just from hearing the interviews game after game and being in that locker room and being around the team and traveling with that team, right? It seems like there was a lot of confusion on what the standard was, what the expectation was. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you go out there, you jump off sides. Hey, don't worry about it. Everybody's got nicknames. Don't worry about it. Sugar Plum, Scooby Doo. We'll get it. We'll get it on Sunday. Don't worry about
that, Crusher. We'll get them next time. Hey,
don't worry about that. Teddy Graham, hip scop, bibbidi boobop. Like, no. We got to get this
different nicknames that we got there, J Mack.
Whatever whatever.
Teddy Graham. Which one was Teddy?
Teddy Graham was. I ain't gonna go there, man. With all the sacks we gave up, everybody was a goddamn Teddy Graham out there.
Hey, man. Teddy Graham was got cut for $10 million. You know what I mean?
Teddy Graham paid though. Teddy Graham paid.
Teddy Graham got the bag.
But you see what I mean? Like, no, you cannot let that stuff slide during the week. You can't. It can't be Thursday. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll get it on Sunday. No, you won't. We got to fix it right now, so it doesn't happen on Sunday. And that's what I mean by these coaches setting the table in terms of what's expected, what the standards are, and the way we're going to do things. And it seemed like there was a lot of confusion on that last year. And if you're one of the guys on that leadership council, I can see why Cole got tired, because hell, I'm out here saying things. The players aren't they ain't listening, right? But the coaches ain't holding things. They're not holding guys accountable. Then it's a shit show. Like, let's be real. It's a shit show.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's kind of what it turned into by the end of last season. The hope is that with the new coaching staff, those leaders actually get a message that resonates through. And it did seem like I don't know what the nicknames was, but it does seem like he was more worried about being friends at the end of it than he was worried about, coming down hard on guys, because there's too many examples of The big one for me is just like we're 4 years in and 3 years into Flus, and everybody's still jumping off sides. You talk about discipline at the end of every week, but we're jumping off sides every single week.
Yeah, I mean, we're making every mistake in the book, critical situations of the game. Like, it's it's over and over and over again. You know what I mean? So it's tough. And, and I think it's tough when you have not saying obviously the record says Coach Flus wasn't a good coach. He was a good guy. And I really think he really did care about the players. And I think he cared about them so much at times where, it's like you can show that affection for your players and show them that you care about them as people. But at the same time, you have to hold them accountable to the utmost standard, because this is the best of the best. This is the big leagues. This is the NFL. You know what I mean? And if you're not, you can have that relationship with a guy, but I think that relationship is stronger if you're going to coach him hard at the same time and then show them that you care about him as a person, because you're setting them up not to fail. You know what I mean? If I'm continuing praising you, but you're a guy that had 3 false starts in a game and I'm not addressing it, well, then how, as a coach, how can I go to bed at night knowing that yeah, we're on good terms because I gave you a nickname when we high five and we got a special handshake, but I'm failing you as a player.
Yeah.
And when I'm failing you as a player, I'm failing you in your opportunity to be in this league because now you're putting bad tape out there. So I'm failing you as a coach. You're a friend, you know what I mean? We got a great relationship off the field, but I'm failing you and I'm failing this team and I'm failing this organization as a coach because I'm not addressing or I'm not upholding guys to a standard that's acceptable. And I think that's when you look at it last year, that's what players were coming out and saying over and over and over again. Every time, whether it was a podcast, radio show, or a post-game interview, guys were saying, well, there's guys, well, I wish guys were in here lifting more. I wish guys were watching more tape, you know? So, and if guys don't want to adhere to a standard and expectation, they got to go. That's just the way of the game. They don't want to watch film. They don't fit what we're looking for. Get their ass out of here. That's got to be the mindset. I mean, if you're serious about winning.
You went through 3 years of Teddy Graham. 2 years of Teddy Graham.
That's what I'm saying.
And he showed up for like 6 practices.
And it's not even him. Like, he wasn't the only Teddy Graham. He wasn't, if you watch film, he's not the only Teddy Graham. That was, you know, I mean, guys hurt and, you know, you bring guys in. I mean, it's like, man, like, and it's tough because I know how hard it is to get in this league. Yeah. I know how hard it is to play in this league. I've never played offensive line in this league, but I played a position that's like a guard in the backfield. And I know the physicality of playing in this league and the demands of playing in this league. You're gonna have to play hurt sometimes. That's what makes you a pro, right? You got to be mentally tough to overcome whatever you're facing physically to go out there and still play. You know what I mean? You're never going to be 100% in this game, ever. No, you know, the 100%. Great ones, they find a way to go out there and play at a high level consistently, right? You look at the best linemen in this league, Trent Williams, all these guys, you know, we talk about, you know, they're all playing with injuries. Even on Sunday, we watched the Super Bowl. None of them guys are healthy. You know how many games they've been through? Nobody's healthy. We see Pat Mahomes out there playing on one foot. Like, Travis Kelce's beat up. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It's all about productivity and are you doing your job? And if you don't have a coach that's laying that on the line each and every week, you ain't going to be a good team. How many injuries do we see the Detroit Lions defense go through? They had like 20-plus starters on defense on IR, but guess what? The standard didn't change, and Aaron Glenn didn't change his defense. He changed it a little bit so guys can play fast, but guess what? We're still going to do what we do. It's our pedigree. We're going to play with grit. We're going to play with tenacity. We're going to play the Detroit Lions way. It ain't going to change, but you have to bring those type of players in the building in order for it to change. You can't bring in no prima donna that wants to practice when he wants to practice. That's not going to put an extra time watching film. It ain't going to work.
Let's hope we see some of those changes. I'll take all of those changes for the Chicago Bears this coming season. And I'll tell you what, you go get a player like Myles Garrett. Hey. The standard is the standard.
They almost made my standard, Joniak's standard, and Thayer's standard slip during the calls because I told him this is how I was going to do the call during the game. I was going to sit my microphone on the bench and. J Mack, what do you see down there? This is what I see right here.
The inside of my eyelids. That's what I'm seeing right now.
I'm telling you, bro, a bunch of nothing.
Yeah, it got so bad by the end of last year. Let's not relive it. We got a new coaching staff, J Mack. We got new coaching staff. We got new players coming in. We're gonna have an entirely new draft. We're signing Myles Garrett. There we go. Everybody's kumbaya. We get Trey Smith.
No. I'm not drinking anything this year. I did it last year. I'm staying even keel. When they sign a coach, and I'm happy about these coaches, right? I am. I'm thrilled about all of them. I know some of them, and I'm glad they're here. But at the same time, this is my reaction.
Yep, little golf clap action.
Little golf clap
action.
Yeah,
I'm there with you. I get you, man. I can't. You can't fool me one time. Shame on you. Fool me twice. Can't put the blame on you. Fool me 3 times. Never mind. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love, man. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Shout out J. Cole. He should not have gotten the beef. And shout out Kendrick Lamar for about to have the entire world call out Drake all at once. That's about to be the most insane thing that I've ever seen in a Super Bowl halftime show outside of Michael Jackson. He's about to have the entire world screaming out that Drake.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy.
It's going to be nuts. For Jason McKie, it's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again, man. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bad down, one love. Claws up. Peace.
Peace.